What is going on, everyone? Matt here, breaking down some Friday games for you. We have actually breaking down the Thursday night game. We have a lot of games to talk about on Friday. Sorry, a little flustered. I thought I had the right screen up. I did not, but now we're ready to go. So here we go. Take two, as it will. Gridiron Ratings here, GR Weekly on the Friday. For me, Matt McCarthy, senior redraft analyst for GridironRatings.com. And again, we are now available in audio as well on Spotify and Podbean, and here on the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel. We just passed 200 subscribers. Again, very thankful for that, for all the people between myself and anyone on the Game Defensive Show and the slate. Really happy for everyone here over on GridironRatings.com. So we got a lot to talk about because again, a little bit shorter of a Wednesday show, a bit longer of a Friday show. Thank you, my school, for that, for giving me so much work during these midterm sort of weeks. But that Green Bay game, we're going to get right into because we have like 10 games to talk about today. So Green Bay taking down the Arizona Cardinals 24-21. I don't want to take too much away from this one. Green Bay side, we have players missing, not missing one of the best linemen in the league, one of the best receivers in the league, one of the best defensive players in the league. Still come on, pull out a win. And I don't want to say too much about Arizona because this was I'm not going to say 7 weeks now it gets defeated because of one loss on the Thursday night game where, yeah, they should have won, but we'll get into it. So Green Bay wins this game with less than 200 net passing yards. I put the graphic from Next Gen Stats over on Twitter.com talking about they had a game plan. They did not throw deep. They only had like 4 attempts more than 10 yards in this game. They kept a lot of it to the line of scrimmage, which was what I kind of called. I said a lot of Aaron Jones type dump offs, a lot of keeping the defense unable to really get close to Rodgers, only 1 sack in the game, and not able to really control the flow of how Green Bay is going to operate. For almost 40 minutes of time of possession for Green Bay in this game, keep Kyler Murray off the field, keep them on the back foot. They had a bunch of short drives because of some odd Rondell Moore, whatever he was doing on that punt return sort of situation going on. But they had a game plan. They really nailed it. Unfortunately, they do come away with a big injury in this one. Robert Tonyan has been announced he has a torn ACL. He will be out for the remainder of the season. So Randall Cobb, now he has to choose score in this game. Great, excellent to always see there. But I don't think he now becomes a player that once this game is over, we then go drop to the waiver wire. I think he's going to be, between wide receiver, 30 something and wide receiver like 45 for the rest of the season. If they're going to use him as the third option, still have to say Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams are the clear top dogs for this Green Bay team, but having another option we can actually really rely on, because up until this point, Robert Tonyan, again, has not really been a situation where we can say we're very confident in what he's really putting out there for us. But in this one, we did get to see a little bit of, just, hey, we're just going to force feed him some looks. We're going to have great utilization of our running backs. A.J. Dillon, 16 carries. Aaron Jones, 15 carries. Add 7 receptions out of the backfield on 11 targets. 3 total turnovers of Arizona. They definitely earned the hell out of that win on Thursday night. Arizona, I don't want to take too much away from a team that was very limited in terms of how they can move the ball. Only 4 of their 8 drives in this game were actually productive. 3 of those were 3 and outs. We did have a 4 play, I believe, interception as well. So we're not saying that, we're going to take too much and say Arizona now is a worse team. I don't understand what AJ Green was particularly doing on that last play of the game, because they could have actually won this one, right? If AJ Green was playing receiver instead of cornerback, because it seems to have flipped roles, they're touchdown away from winning this game, or at least tying it up in those last few seconds, right? We could have sat here and said, Arizona still 8-0, still, top team in the league. What can we actually take away? What's actual advice we can take away from this Arizona side? I think both top 20, both running backs are going to be top 24 type players. They've really been operating as such. But James Conner, by hook or by crook, he's getting it done. A 2-score game, 5 carries for like 20 yards. Cool. Again, they did not have a lot of time to make things develop. Chase Edmonds is still going to do very nice things through the air. Without a doubt, this was just the worst overall offensive output that Arizona had all season. Kyler Murray does not come in with any touchdowns in this game. Hopkins, the hamstring hacked it up, and he was in and out of this game at times. The roulette wheel that is the Arizona receivers, it's going to keep them all in flex territory at best. Zach Ertz as well included in that group. But moving on to now the previews for the day, and we got to talk about, The shirt I'm currently wearing today, Detroit Lions, because I think there's a possibility that they might win a game on Sunday. Philadelphia versus Detroit. Philadelphia favored by 3.5, 48-point over under. Hurts, Goddard starting on this Philadelphia side must starts if they're relative to their position. Hurts still no finishes outside the top 10 at quarterback. I understand, right? Everyone was putting up different metrics of his fantasy points by quarter, and it's very overwhelming that he gets a lot of production very late in the game, whether or not that means his team wins or loses. But it's just all coming very towards the back end. A lot of people are saying he's like Bortles, just doing all garbage time work. And it's like, listen, I personally don't care. If he has a 25-point, performance and 5 comes in each quarter or whatever, that's what I care about is how he finishes out the game, and he's a great fantasy quarterback. He's right outside my top 3. I got Dak in there. We got to keep an eye on Dak, though. We'll get to that game in just a little bit. But for me, I really do love this spot versus Detroit. I think this is going to be a very competitive game, oddly enough. We unfortunately will not be with Miles Sanders, who has been put on IR. He's been out for at least 3 weeks. Doesn't catapult Kenneth Gainwell to a top 20 performance, though, possibly for me. We're struggling to get usage out of Sanders. We're struggling to get usage for Kenneth Gainwell on the secondary role. So there's also a shot that they do like Boston Scott. There's a possibility he gets some quality run, whatever quality run may mean. But I do have like a 10-spot cushion between these two. Gainwell, a low RB2, Boston Scott, a flex option at best. I prefer not to play him, but if he comes and steals some work out of Kenneth Gainwell's pocket, it would not make me that much surprised. Moving on to the Detroit side, usual crew really just for me. Hockenson and Swift. I think Goff as a second quarterback in a Superflex league, I think if you're going to feel comfortable playing Goff, this would be one of the situations where you could do so. But Philly, third best matchup for running backs on the season. You can pencil Swift in for about 4 receptions per game up to this point. Question of how high the ceiling could go for him. Outside of the normal smash spot running backs for this week in terms of matchups, or you're always going to play them sort of guys like Derrick Henry. He is my next favorite play. So I'm a little bit higher than the field, around like running back 7 right now. And Hockenson just outside my top 5. I prefer Goddard on the other side of this game, but after 3 weeks of tight end 20 or worse play, his reception numbers really came up. 14 receptions over the last 2 weeks. I believe he had 8 in the 3 games prior to that. Again, him and Pitts, right? If they perform well this week, see what you could possibly do with them. At one point this season, we've seen Mark Andrews, Waller, Hockenson, Pitts all be crowned the tight end 2 rest of the season, with Kelsey being the locked in tight end 1. But with these 4 guys, they all sort of flash at different points. And with 2 of the top 5 no longer, not options for this week with the buys and Waller and Andrews, if Hockenson comes out and performs well here, see what you can do in terms of Hockenson if you like to trade away, or see if you can make an upgrade and make some moves. Because having one of these really locked-in guys who are not just tight ends, but tight end pluses, we do have some other options that have emerged of late. Dawson Knox at one point in the season, Dalton Schultz, Mike Gesicki has been popping lately. See what you could possibly do. See if you can make some moves if you feel inclined to do so. Tennessee versus Indianapolis. Indianapolis favored by 1. The line will probably move. Julio Jones has been announced to be out for this game. 51-point over-under as well to what I had. But with him being moved out, I want to see if it makes any moves for me in terms of Brown, Henry, yada, 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 the rest of the guys. Brown, will that be moving? I liked Brown quite a bit already, so it doesn't move the needle for me. Already a top 10. I want to see if there's any sort of correlation between Julio being in and out and Ryan Tannehill scoring. Only 2 games so far of 20 points for Tannehill on the entire season. Did not seem to be any sort of rhyme or reason for Julio being in or out. Tannehill has just not been a good fantasy quarterback on the year. Mostly because Derrick Henry has so much scoring that he outputs for this team that for our purposes, we do not need to really look at Tannehill. He was going to be a back-end top 12 quarterback with Julio active. Now you can firmly get away from him. I prefer Wentz on the other side, still both outside the top 15 for me, though. Anyway, Julio being out doesn't make Westbrook Kine, Josh Reynolds become options. Not particularly. There's only 2 teams on the bye. I hope you're not looking this far down the list. These can be guys like in my 50s or 60s at wide receiver that we're hoping you don't need to be relying on these sort of players in this game. Also, Darrington Evans has been ruled out for the rest of the season with the second time he's been put on IR with his knee issues, which means more Derrick Henry. Yeah, probably more Derrick Henry. Because I was going to say I couldn't remember what the name of the backup running back would now be for Tennessee, but it doesn't. I don't think it really particularly matters. It's more Derrick Henry and Derrick Henry. Moving on though. With over to the Indianapolis side, I do like the Colts quite a bit in this spot. Like I said, prefer Wentz to what I was going to get on this side with Tannehill. Taylor, Pittman, love those guys. Pittman inside my top 20, and Taylor, smash spot, I think, for him here. Hilton should be back in this one. Allows for big plays on the Tennessee side that has given him up in the past. Top 40 sort of receiver for Hilton. Should pop up as a flex option in rosters this week. If he lasts the entire game, we're hoping, as he returned in week 6 and then was out for all of week 7. In terms of more marginal plays in this team, I still understand why Hines has been used so sparingly. 4 targets over the last month. This was a player that was competing as a top 5 overall targeted running back on the year in 2020. Makes really no sense to me what his usage has been in 2021, considering what he was doing for them just last year. Rams versus Houston. Very quick, very straightforward game. Rams favored by 14.5. Biggest spread on the week. 47.5 point over under. Start usual Rams. You can start all the Rams if you like. I don't know how the Texans and the Lions are the back-to-back opponents for the Rams, but sure. The Sean Jackson, though, was requested a trade from the Rams, which is good for him. I actually really respect that. Is he wants to be used more in the team's week-to-week plans than he currently is for the Rams. But man, would think he'd want to stick around for a team that has some pretty good aspirations for a Super Bowl run. I was told on Twitter, though, that there's a certain amount of games you have to be active for a team to be considered to get a ring towards contributing to their season. I did not know that. I don't have all the information for that. So if he still gets a ring if they win, cool. But he wants to be used more as an offensive weapon for a team out there. And right now, he's just very far down the ladder for them. And how's it going, Julia? Thanks for tuning in here to GR Weekly on a Friday. Over on the Houston side, though, again, we were talking about the trade over on Wednesday. Man, it's still a very woof situation over here for the Houston Texans, with Ingram now being shipped off for a compensation of a 7th round pick, which is basically free, whatever the salary that goes with it. Cool. There was somewhat of a rush from people to go out and pick up David Johnson and Philip Lindsay. Of my 18 teams, I think I picked them up in, either one of them, like 4 or 5. It depends on how far down my roster. I was really looking to see a guy like Johnson would have been my preferred. In the preseason, I was someone who was in on David Johnson because I think they would have been trailing in games all the time, which they have been. Unfortunately, with no Tyrod Taylor, this offense is really sunk in the touchdown department. It was 6 touchdowns through, a game and a half with Tyrod Taylor for the entire team. Only 5 scores in any game since for Houston. I lean Johnson again. He's in my top 36 running back. I don't want to go out and say some reports are saying he's now going to be featured. What does featured mean for an offense that is not going to be able to have a ball carrier go for 12 to 15 carries on a day? Philip Lindsay is not any sort of a scrub. They were, the one player was going to be moved out of his backfield. The least valuable one in my mind went. So it's still going to be something where I'm not very high on these guys. The only option I'm still looking towards is Cooks. And even then, I'm looking at him as a flex receiver, near around, wide receiver 25 to 30 is the range I'd say for him. 1 game of double-digit points on the month in full PPR. We're hoping to have Tyrod Taylor back soon. Houston is on bye in week 10. Next game, New England versus the LA Chargers. Chargers favored by 6 at the moment, 49 point over under. Start on the New England side. On the New England side, Harris, a very firm start, top 5 matchup versus LA Chargers run defense. We got to talk about the Hunter Henry revenge game, though, right? If that's something you're inclined to think about, fine. I think he's been a good fantasy tight end for the last month. He's been a very safe option. No games with less than 6 points in in fantasy for the entire year. But Henry, 181 routes run the year for tight end. That's pretty good. He's out here trying to be what I thought Jonnu Smith was going to be. And they preferred him and paid him less money and paid him less years, but whatever may be to me. But and here's something I want to say is I don't want to use it as lazy analysis, right? Technically, the LA Chargers have the second most points allowed to tight ends on the year. But you got to look at the schedule because at this position, you're more or less you're seeing what is the kind of talent that is being put up against a defense week to week, right? So they have faced Kelsey, they have faced Andrews, they have faced Waller, the Cowboys tight end, Logan Thomas, the Browns guys. These are good tight ends. So for the Chargers, I'm not going to say that, oh, yeah, just start Hunter Henry with, no, real hangups just because he's facing a team that technically showed to be the second best matchup. For receivers, for running backs, for quarterbacks, that's a different story. For tight ends, I think it's very lazy to just say, oh, they're giving up all these points. Well, the reason they're giving all those points is because they faced, at least in my mind, 3 of the best 5 tight ends in the league. Meyer's a flex option. He's doomed to never score for me, or for anyone for that matter. He's had exactly 44 yards 3 times this year, which isn't, an overly abundant amount of times, but it's weird it's happened 3 times, right? We do have a comment in the chat. Interesting, Deshaun wants to be traded. I think he's lucky the Rams picked him up from all the teams that Deshaun was on. He has a huge chance for again. I was told that, and again, that's not my knowledge, that if he sticks. He's stuck around for enough games where he's eligible to receive a ring. I have no idea if that's true or not. But for the more matter, I think for his sake, I do respect the fact that he wants to be used week to week. He wants to be involved. He's a football player. Football players want to play football. I give him kudos because a lot of people just say like, hey, take the paycheck, take the ring, and, live your life. But Deshaun Jackson, definitely a guy who's always had a chip on his shoulder. He really wants to be, I wouldn't say a focal point. I mean, he's up there in age now, and we understand kind of what he is to this point. But he wants to be used by a team, and for them, they have no real need for him. They're so deep at receiver and so top heavy with Kupp and Woods that for their purposes, I get it. I don't. In terms of teams that could be looking for a guy like that, the Colts could be one. The Saints could be one. Maybe the Patriots, if they would like to do something like that, they swap him for N'Keal Harry because N'Keal Harry wants out of New England. So that'd be really funny to me, right? Thank you for the comment, though. But I respect the I want to be used. I want to be a real player and showcase my capabilities. I give them all the credit in the world for that. Big news though on the LA Charger side, Austin Eckler misses Thursday and Friday practices. There was a comment from coaching that came out just about an hour ago that said he was a little sore. He feels better than he did the other 2 days. But they must have picked it up in the Wednesday sort of practice. This is very much just spur of the moment. Like, hey, he's hurt. In terms of who is favored for the rest of these running back, like let's say total disaster scenario, because we saw this play out in week 1. He played, he was great, right? Larry Roundtree, the second or third, I can't remember how many lines there's leads the rest of the Chargers backs in both snap percentage at 5% and carries at 24 with Jackson and Kelly 10 and 6 respectively. If he is ruled out, I don't think I love any of them. Roundtree would be my primary of the 3, but I think it's going to be more of a lean on the passing game. Williams and Allen are already great starts. Herbert also starting for sure. New England defense, they do like to take away one guy. Maybe Eckler is active and is not utilized well enough anyway. The Patriots are very much, we've seen it for years. They focus on one guy in defense. Who's to say who it is this week? But I think they all get a little bit of a bump. Jared Cook as well for shorter yardage situations with no Eckler in there. We need to wait for more info throughout the weekend. I'm currently saying he plays, and I'm ranking as he's playing. Downgrade him on just a little bit in my overall ranks, but it's not anything saying he's a sit or anything to that matter. We do have a question. Buy or sell, the other Chargers will win the AFC West. Well, it's not going to be Denver, so we can cross them off. And the Raiders, again, I give them a lot of respect because a lot of people thought they were just going to lay down and die after the whole John Gruden situation. they're winning games, in spots where, late situations, close game situations. The Baltimore Ravens, before the bye, was not ideal to go out and just get absolutely stomped. But I still think the Chargers win the AFC West. It's going to be a little bit of a slog because you really can't say the Kansas City Chiefs are ever completely out of it. They've had some bad games, yes, but if they lost last week against Washington, it was going to be a real panic situation. I still think people are overstating what Patrick Mahomes has been this year, especially for fantasy purposes, right? Let me bring up as all my screens get all messed up here for a second. Ooh, what's going on here? Let me see if I can bring up Patrick Mahomes' fantasy point finishes on the year, because I think people are overstating just from these last few weeks how good Mahomes has actually been as a fantasy quarterback through this year. So in terms of fantasy point finishes through the first 5 weeks, second, seventh, second, and then we started hitting the real turmoil, right? 13th. And up to that point, when he finished 13th, he was the second highest finishing quarterback in terms of lowest finish on the year. Jalen Hurts still a top dog there. He has not finished lower than QB 10 to that point in week 5. The 13th finish was the lowest in terms from Mahomes. 7th the week after against Tennessee, against Washington, and 22nd. So finally a real bust week. Otherwise, Mahomes has been a top 12 type quarterback every other week. So I think for our purposes, we really have kind of overstated the real descent of Mahomes. It's very hard for a guy to be the number 1 quarterback every single week. I saw some things saying like, "Oh, I traded for Mahomes this year, and he screwed me. He's terrible this year." He's been excellent. He's been a QB1, which is what he's supposed to be almost every week up until last week. The problem was that why I didn't like him in the draft season was that you had guys like Murray, you had guys like Allen and Jackson and Prescott, all these players towards the top 5 who were just as excellent options as Mahomes, and you didn't have to go draft him like you would have had to Mahomes, who was going considerably earlier or almost as a locked-in QB1 overall out of ADP. Now we're seeing it play out where it's like, oh, all these quarterbacks are great. Oh, also Aaron Rodgers does stuff that's awesome. Justin Herbert's been good. Like we've had, Kirk Cousins pop up. Derek Carr has been good at times. Like there's so many good quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts is another one who has been very consistently excellent. That's what makes Mahomes look bad. It's not because Mahomes has played poorly outside just last week. It's because you have so many quarterbacks who have come out and shown they are going to be a good option as well. Also, another question, Matt, why are you so high on David Johnson? You picked up in our league. He is sharing touch with Lindsay, and the coach does not like to use him. Evidently, he never went for less than rushing, 25 yards rushing or receiving. I don't like him that much. Here's the thing, is that David Johnson technically is now a starting running back, and running back is the worst position in football outside of tight end. And tight end, for that matter, we all kind of know that. Running back, we need to go in and get guys who we can really relatively use. I'm not particularly high on him. And sharing touches with Lindsay, rushing work, I don't care about. If David Johnson is going to get receiving work, that is what I care about. I do not care about rushing in this regards. It's only going to be about receiving, and PPR sort of formats. That's what we're looking at. And again, I said it, I think right before you came in, I am in 18 leagues. I think I picked up one of David Johnson or Lindsay in only 5 of 18 leagues. So right around, like a 25% sort of mark. I can't say that I'm very high on him. He's just, I probably dropped some, back into the bench player. I wasn't dropping any sort of handcuffs. I wasn't dropping any sort of, I think I dropped in that league. I think maybe it was like the Baltimore Ravens defense. It's on a bye. I'm very much not high on them. Let me see what I'm actually in regards to ranks this week with David Johnson across other rankers in the league. Because David Johnson, I have him at 35. And again, up to this point, doesn't matter. Nothing that matters from whatever he's done does not matter to me, because this is now a completely different situation with them not having Ingram, who has been their lead back for all intents and purposes from this backfield on a team that, again, has a very tough job of rushing the ball because they don't score enough and they're always behind in games, and they've been, pretty overall bad. But in full PPR, I am just above the consensus average, which would be around 37. So I'm at 35. In terms of players, though, there's only 4 or 5 rankers that have him lower than 45th. And I don't think I'm very much overly, zealous with the 35th ranking. And in terms of Lindsay I have at 43, and for full PPR compared to consensus at 43. I'm technically high on Lindsay, and that means that's probably something I'm going to adjust for if people are still considering him not to be very much used. I think it's going to be not much. I do agree. I don't think it's, some people are saying he's going to have a featured role now. I think that's quite silly. I'm just looking at running back. Having Lindsay at 43 compared to Dearness Johnson, Samaje Perine, Sony Michel, Ty Johnson, Giovanni Bernard. Honestly, all the running backs in this range, you can put those guys in any sort of order because they're all going to have 5 points, 6 points in full PPR. Not much going on down here particularly matters if they're not going to be used in any sort of big regards. And again, there's some players down here in my ranks, like I still need to move Saquon Barkley up if he does play. Otherwise, I'm not really ranking him appropriate right now because we don't know if he's going to be playing or not. But after a certain point, the running backs ranks kind of don't matter. It's kind of more or less what you feel their overall touch workload is going to be, but you're not trusting any of those guys as any sort of starts. Jackson versus Seattle. We got 5 more games on the docket. Seattle favored by 3, 43.5 point over under. Jacksonville coming off the bye. I like this spot quite a bit for both sides, even though it is not a very high total. Robinson's probably going to be a locked in top 12 option rest of the season. Seattle most yards allowed to opposing offenses last I checked. Chanel and Jones back to back for me in my ranks as wide receiver 3s. Even with the good matchup, Jacksonville does scare me as a spot to invest too much in them. I do like Lawrence, but I can't say I love either of the receivers. If they do well, great. I'm kind of right along with consensus whereas they're kind of going right now. I'm not pushing the envelope really on them. And Lawrence, just a back end QB1 option. There are players I like to rank ahead of him. If we have just 2 or 3 active players for the New York Giants, I'd rather have Daniel Jones. Sam Darnold is consideration as well. I just can't really trust what Darnold has been doing as after that really hot start. He's not getting a lot of rushing scores, which was kind of unnaturally inflating his production early on in the year. But Lawrence, I think if you are a Jackson guy and you need a quarterback, I do think that's a fine replacement here in this week. There was a possibility I was going to pick up Jackson for Lawrence for Aaron Rodgers. Stuck with Rodgers. Fine game, I think, from him. Even doesn't get over 200 yards passing in that one. Seattle, possibly the last hurrah for Geno Smith, and possibly also the last hurrah for Chris Carson. It's possibility that he does not play any more this year. But Smith with less than 12 fantasy points in all 3 games he has started. Start Metcalf for me. I prefer both Jacksonville receivers to Lockett. Really, Lockett for me right now is just not getting it done with Smith. And even to that point early on in the year, it was the big plays, the 45-yard, 50-something yard passes that he was coming down for scores was really, really pumping up his numbers. I can't really rely on him any sort of bit right now. It's really just Metcalf. And Collins, I still don't understand why he gets just 2, 3, 4 touches in the beginning of the game. And then the second half and back-to-back weeks, they've come out and really established Collins as a fantasy option. I'd like to say that he gets a good overall amount of work in this one, but Rashad Penny was the dominant running back to the first half of last week for Seattle, and then really just ceded touches to Collins in the second half. I'm going to rank Collins as the lead back, but let's see what kind of goes down with Penny. Carroll has a soft spot for Penny, I suppose, but was not very particularly effective, I thought, for Seattle last week. Washington versus Denver, 4 games left. Denver favored by 3, 44.5 point over under. Gibson, without a doubt, is the hardest player to rank this week. Just without a doubt. He's obviously struggled with this shin issue. Has not missed games, though. We just saw Dearness Johnson just run all over this Denver defense. And it's a spot we should technically be trusting Gibson to output a good fantasy performance for us. I have him as running back 20 right now in full PPR. And for me, if he doesn't produce here, it's almost like I wish they would have sat him, because we do see McKissick come in high valuable situations near the line, receiving. He's not playing on third down. It's really annoying. I'm not a particularly high Gibson guy from the preseason, but I thought he had a pretty locked in role to be used in multifaceted ways. He's not Christian McCaffrey light. as we've seen Ron Rivera talk him up as such multiple times. Kind of a liar in that sort of sense. But I still think he's a start here, just a running back 2, though, not a running back 1, as he's had consideration in the past. Terry McLaurin, start as always. Ricky Seals-Jones inside my top 12, as we're still struggling to really find another receiving option. Curtis Samuel has been ruled out once again for Washington. He's been struggling with the groin all year. McKissick could fill in with some of that receiving work because there's no really other receiving option to recommend. No De'Ami Brown. It's never Adam Humphries. Just Jones for the position, McLaurin. And sometimes that's kind of all they really need and all we really need to start from them for Washington. Over to Denver. Pretty good matchup for Denver, but they just got a little bit more congested, though, because we do have Jerry Jeudy back for this one. And I'm going to be a little higher on the consensus with him. I think they had no he's fully cleared, and there's no hangups on him. Rock and roll for him. So we're starting Sonny, starting Jeudy, starting Fant, and both running backs back-to-back for me is low RB2s and maybe kind of a RB3 in terms of what the number is. I think it's like 24, 25 for the guys. Once again, prefer Melvin Gordon too. Javonte Williams. Again, the 50-50 split works for them. It really hurts us. But they are getting good enough points that you're really not super unhappy with them. They're RB2s. They're safe RB2s. They're really not going to have so much of a ceiling, but they're going to get you 10, 12 points. And you're really, in some cases, I've particularly not been super disappointed with Gordon. He's not going to have the 20 to something 25-point game. You weren't drafting him to be such. You never thought of him to be such. I think for people, it's more about Javonte Williams. They want him to just get the role all to himself and really start rocking and rolling. 2022 is kind of when it's going to start. 2021, I think they're going to really, until Gordon starts really not performing well, I think this is kind of what we're going to see until further notice. And on to this Tampa Bay versus New Orleans game. Tampa Bay minus 5.5, 50-point over-under. This is the super straightforward. You're going to start anyone you want to as normal because we don't have Antonio Brown. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin really, blew up in the spot last week against Chicago, but Chicago was not able to move the ball out of their own, side of the field at all against this Tampa Bay defense. Starting Brady, you're starting both receivers. Gronkowski, I am ranking. He should be back for this one, so no Cameron Brate. And you're starting Fournette and Kamara, both in very tough. These are, I think, the two toughest run defense in the league. Kamara, it's on my top 12. Fournette outside of my top 15. If there's going to be a spot I don't really want to love Fournette, it'd be here, and Kamara as well. But receiving work is king for Kamara. He still does that. Fournette, not as much well-versed in it. He can receive passes, but Kamara we've known as one of the dominant receiving backs in the league. Very straightforward, high total for this one. You're starting really just Kamara on the New Orleans side, and then you're starting really all your normal bucks over on Tampa Bay. Really not too much behind-the-scenes analysis for this one. Dallas versus Minnesota. This is technically the best game of the week, but we need to have some options in play. Daniel Jones, if you are a Dak Prescott manager, you need to make sure that you have Jones on your roster because right now Dak Prescott is a questionable and sort of a heavy questionable. He had the knee or the ankle kind of sprained on the leg with the last play of the game back against New England over in week 6. We had all the week, the bye week to kind of get over it, but unfortunately it's still sort of bothering him. But man, I like to say you start all your Cowboys and I like to say you start all your Vikings, but we need to talk about two players. Osborne over on the Minnesota side, I like him as a deep flyer, and Michael Gallup looks to be activated for this game. Now Schultz has picked up some pretty good numbers with no Gallup. So I'm very curious to see how he affects Schultz, Jarwin, and technically Amari Cooper, right? Cooper and Thielen I have outside my top 20. Jefferson and Jefferson and Lamb. I don't want to say Samuel. Lamb are inside my top 10. But Gallup, Amari Cooper, first game, because he went, 13 receptions in week 1, where the hell it was. 4 or 5 straight weeks of 3 receptions, and he had a 4-reception game to break that streak back in week 6, right? Coming out of the bye, I'm hoping to see some more consistent work out of him because Cooper was, really flirting with being a top 12 option receiver. And now it's like, all right, well, I guess he's a top 24 guy in the terms of the offense he plays on. But if Gallup is going to even start hitting into the overall target share, Now we're even more worried about Cooper being an actual good fantasy option for us. And we're starting to get into territories where it's like, all right, am I playing Amari Cooper? Or am I playing, Brandon Cooks? Am I playing Amari Cooper? Or am I playing, Laviska Shenault? Or like we're starting to get to that point with him. I am a little worried about Cooper. I want to really see what he does with Gallup back and what this overall offense is going to look. Start your running backs and all the other funky bunch as needed. Tyler Conklin as well, if you're really in a desperate tight end spot, I think is a fine play. Last game, as my voice is starting to go. New York Giants versus Kansas City. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think it's going to, we've kind of enjoyed Dalton Schultz, and we've kind of enjoyed that it's just more target focused for the two lead Dallas receivers. It's going to be see how he really overall changes that offense. I'm hoping it's for the better and it just leads to more scoring and more big things. But again, the Dallas defense has been good. They're not getting into games where they need to have, 50 pass attempts from Dak, and they're getting into 35 to 34 point games. Dallas has been very good on both sides of the ball this year, and it's really affected this overall ceiling of this Dallas team no matter what. But Giants versus Kansas City favored by 10, 52.5 point over under. Starting all your usual Kansas City players, kind of the same thing week to week. There's a good matchup against the Giants. We're starting Mahomes again. He's a great play. Over what anyone tells you, Kelsey, Williams and Hill. But the Giants side, I am very hesitant to rank at the moment. Right, I am really not actually ranking any of the Giants wide receivers because we don't know who's going to be active. Right, so with this being the Monday night game and a team that is the most banged up on offense in the NFL, right now it looks like no Barkley and looks like no Galladay, but will we have Shepard and Tony though? I have no idea. I'm not making any definitions on this team yet. One of the best matchups you could possibly have is playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and the more pieces, the better for this entire group. But preemptive rankings, if I were to rank them right now as if they were in, Jones would just move right into the back end of the top 12 or right outside of it. Booker moves in the top 24 at running back with no Barkley. Again, he gets better as his team gets more pieces to it. We want to get him close to the red zone when I get scoring opportunities. Sterling Shepard would be a wide receiver 2. Tony, a high wide receiver 3, not exactly wide receiver 2, would probably my ranks. And Ingram just outside of top 12. He's been just so hard to trust. One of my preferred tight ends to look for if you're an Andrews or Waller guy without them. But, yikes. It's just, and again, I'm seeing in the chat is I'm not considering, again, this is what? So we're Friday. This is technically like a Thursday practice or a Wednesday practice. I'm leaving all ideas of what the Giants team are going to be until further notice. If Barkley plays, awesome. I have a ton of Barkley in a bunch of leagues. I'd be ecstatic for that. This is a great matchup. But man, it's just what it looks like right now. It looks like Jones is most likely to have, I think the most likely player is Shepard. He's going to be wide receiver 2 for me. The second most likely guy is Tony. Ingram is technically questionable as well. Everything about this team, I'm just leaving to just waiting it out. I'm going to wait till the news reports tomorrow on Saturday. So make sure to, if you're looking for my advice, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Methodical1. But man, I'm almost completely hands off about giving any sort of opinions on the Giants until further notice. Again, those are my preemptive ranks if they are ranked, ruled in. But make sure if you do have Giants players that you are looking to, have a KJ Osborne on your bench if you need to fill in a receiver spot. Make sure you have other options for these guys because really we have no idea who's going to play or not. This has been just a struggle for them to just field a respectable offense. John Ross, is technically, I believe I have him in my ranks as well. Going to move him out considering what these guys do. But man, this has been a tough team to really sort of have any. I have one team that has Shepard, Tony, Barkley, and Galladay. That team's 2-5, and it's probably because of these guys. But with that, we're going to wrap it up for GR Weekly here. I've been Matt McCarthy on this Friday night. It's finally getting October-y up here in New York. I really liked it because I've been so tired of the hot weather. So it's nice that we're finally, it really feels like football weather now, right? With that, schedule as always, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7:30 p.m. for me, unless I have school stuff. Like I had to miss the Monday episode this week. Tuesday and Thursday is getting defensive, the slate on the weekend. And with that, this is the last time you spent your time with me. I do appreciate it. I would start between Darrell Williams and Booker, the question in the chat there. But with that, and every time I record, the day after, I am available in audio only if you want to go back and listen to any of this. So again, or subscribe and listen to us over on the YouTube channel. And with that, good luck in your week 8 matchups. I'll be back here on Monday to break all of that